All right, CNT125, Chapter 10, we're working on our next section. We're working on the AAA part of our section, Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting. This one we're going to focus on the first part, Authentication. So controlling users' access to a network and its resources, it really has three pieces to it. Then this is the AAA, Authentication, Authorization, and Accounting. We need all three to manage proper access control. Who has access to what? So real quickly, authentication is really about who are you? Are you an employee here? Who are you? Do you belong here kind of thing? Are you a guest? Who are you? Try to identify who you are. Authorization is what are you allowed to do? Where are you allowed to go? What are you authorized to do? As an employee, you can go here, here, and here. As a guest, well, you can go here, which is going to get you the internet. So authorization is really about the whole, what are you allowed to do, and making sure the correct things are allowed and not allowed. And accounting is the whole log of, while you were here, what did you do? Because I might need to look back at that some point and say, what were you doing while you were here? Yeah, you were all legit, okay. Or no, you were trying to do these commands on this thing. What were you trying to do? That is not part of your job. So the AAA is this authentication, authorization, accounting. And I liked how they summed it up with the who are you, what are you allowed to do, and what did you do? That's the easiest way to keep track of these. So looking at the first part, authentication. A user can be authenticated to a local device or a network. A local device or local authentication is just that. You're signing on to your local device, a Windows device or your desktop computer, and that account is saved on that machine. So if I fire up my laptop and it's not connected to the internet or anything, and when it first prompts me for a password and I type it in and finish logging in, that is an account stored on that machine, allowing me to access that machine. That's what that is. That's your local authentication. Meanwhile, network authentication is when you boot up your system and it prompts you for a password, username and password, and that is shipped across the network to a server, and the server looks you up and authenticates you and allows you to finish booting the computer. That is a network authentication. And if you get that wrong or there's no internet connection, it doesn't let you do anything else. That's your network authentication. There's two different ways you can authenticate, local and network. The local, perform the local device, there's some pros and cons. Usernames and passwords are stored locally, so if you don't have an internet connection or a network connection, I can still use the local device. But there is some low security here. And the convenience varies on what you're able to do, and reliable backup access. Yeah, okay, I have it in case we have issues, but I don't have maybe local or proper backup, if you will, back of my data. My local devices are not always that secure. I can brute force my way through that device. If that same account or credentials are used on more than one thing, I might now have access to more things on the network. And I can't remotely lock down that device or that user account if it's a local store. Convenience. Managing local accounts can be easier setting up in a Windows domain or directory service, but convenience of local authentication declines considerably after just a device or two. So if I'm just managing 2 or 3 computers at my business or my church, easy peasy for local accounts. But after I get to about a dozen computers, I literally have to go to every machine to manage them. So now after like maybe a dozen computers, managing through a domain on a server becomes the easier way to do it. And that's what they're getting at with convenience. If you have just a couple machines, local authentication, pretty easy. If I have a lot, I'm going to want to have that all in one central spot like a server. That's what they're getting at there. Reliable backup access. If I do have a network or server failure, this local account allows me to at least boot up, use it, and do some stuff locally. Then I have to worry about getting the data saved at another point. But it gives me at least that. So there should be at least some local account privileges that if there's an issue, people can log on locally, do some things until network functionality is restored, server functionality is restored, whatever it happens to be. That should be at least your backup level. Group policy can be handled. Okay, so if you have a network full of Windows computers, you might actually have a group policy on there that's allowing what these computers can and cannot do, what these local computers can and cannot do. This is usually handled through your registry. You actually go into the registry using a little utility. The book talks about the command to do that, to load your registry and indicate on this local user computer what they're allowed to do. Can they open a command prompt? Can they go in and change their network settings? Can they go change the work group? Can they go change? So these kind of things are set of like, yes you can, no you can't, almost putting a little fence around them to control what the local user can use. That's all part of your group policy. And here's a group policy editor showing going your way down through your account settings, local policies. Here's your security, what they can and cannot do. Most facilities do that. They have some kind of group policy for the local computers, what they can and cannot do. With local authentication, every computer is responsible for securing its own resources. Again, as the network grows, that becomes a little bit more of an administrative nightmare. That's where the Windows domain comes in. With the Windows domain, I can point everybody to a specific server to maintain their files. Also, point to a specific server for user account login, and it's now authenticating to their account on the Windows server. To change from a local to a network authentication, I'm going to use the domain system property box. So here I look at the system properties. This is where I would change my name. In here there's an option to change my work group. And I think I have another example here. Here you go. Yeah, this is I have broken out. Where you would actually change your computer name, I can come in here and do the change for the domain or work group. When I do, this pops up, and this right now is set for work group, which is basically peer-to-peer. If I click the domain option, I'm now going to start authenticating to a Windows server domain. I'm now going to be in a client server environment, and that's what they're talking about. When I want to change from local authentication to network authentication, that's where I do that. And I basically say, okay, please authenticate me to a Windows server instead of doing my own thing. No matter what I'm doing, whether it's Windows, Linux, whatever, okay, I definitely need secure passwords to authenticate to the network. Absolutely. In addition, these are some other things we should think about. What time of day we're logging in, login time, source address, etc. So let's take a look at those. Time of day, most of your server accounts can be set to be accessible during certain times of the day. In some facilities, you might say, you know what? You're logging in, you work here 8 to 5, so we're going to allow this account to be usable 8 to 5. If somebody tries to use it at 7 o'clock at night, it's not going to let them. And the idea is somebody might be trying to impersonate that. Somebody that works there at night is trying to impersonate a day employee to get extra privileges. So that is going to deny that. And you can actually specify in your server account what hours they're accessible, they're allowed to use. That's your setting, time of day setting. Total time logged on. After so many hours, they're automatically logged out. And this can increase, if somebody accidentally forgets to log out their machine, they go home. After a few hours, it's going to log out. And now, Friday evening it's logged out and it's not left logged on all weekend long. That is a way to increase security again and help with these temporary, these security risks, if you will. Source address, where are they trying to log in from? They're trying to log in from a part of the building they're not supposed to, so it's not going to let them do that. It's coming from a wrong network segment, if you will. Unsuccessful login attempts. Most of us have encountered this one point or another. After you try your account 5 times, it doesn't let you in, it's going to log out. Somebody's trying to maybe brute force the password, trying to get their way in. Again, this is set in your account settings. This is just an example I found, but you get the idea. You can set how many times they're allowed to log in before it locks them out. Unsuccessful login attempts. Geofencing. Now with a lot of systems that have GPS built into them, you can actually restrict where the account can be logged in from. So you could say anything out of our, our service area. If they're trying to log in remotely, it's going to say, no, I don't know who you are. What are you trying to do? You can basically create a GPS fence around and say, yes, you can log in, or no, you can't. Hey, you can log in because your other site, you're coming from this GPS, okay. And that can help with some of your remote or mobile users too. All right. When we come back in the next one, we'll start talking the next A, our authorization.